To flourish as an empath, an emotional empath, that is, as an energy healer, as a way shower, as a light worker, you must stand in your power. Before I get into this video, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed. I really appreciate you. If you have not yet subscribed, please do subscribe, help this channel to grow. Do press the like button. You to be able to tolerate these dark energies that are being artificially manufactured. You have to power up, okay? The more on the side of the empath spectrum that you are, you're going to feel a lot of times like you're being energetically assaulted, right? You could be in a room and no one is speaking and you can just feel the assault on you, and it makes you, and maybe you don't even know what's happening. So for those people, you might know what's happening because you're aware that you're an empath. For certain people who don't know what it is to be an empath, well, then at least the descriptions will allow you to understand what that is and why you're feeling like you're being assaulted just by being in the presence of certain people or being in a room with people. Nobody's saying anything to you and yet you feel attacked or you come away just feeling exhausted. You come away feeling like you are sick. You come away feeling like you are drunk, and maybe for the next couple of days it's like you have this hangover and you have to you're just weak, or some people get very, very depressed and different things like that. Or some people have physical symptoms like headaches, or you might feel nauseous. There's so many different things that you can feel when you come away from being in a around other people. Then they could be the people that you love the most, and yet you don't want to be around certain people. This is why the reason why you feel like that is because empaths are healers, right? You have incarnated here on this planet in order to help to break down the toxicity that's in the atmosphere and to help to heal people. You're also here to energetically upgrade other people, and you're here to heal people energetically. You're also here to help people to expand their minds. This is what a way shower is. A healer, energy healers will also help with energy expansion because you have to clear away a lot of the trauma out of people's energy field to help them to expand. Because what happens is that when you are feeling under attack, the thing that you will do is your ego cocoons you to protect you. Therefore, if you're in a cocoon, how can you be expansive? And if you're not expansive, you cannot become conscious. So one of the things that we are doing as empaths is to clear energy, break down energy, just like the ocean, just like water is a purifier. The empath is a purifier, your energetic purifier. So, you know, if you put water in a bowl, it purifies the air, right? So all that toxins is going into the water that's in the air. Same thing is happening to you, my loves, whenever you're in with a group of people. So although you might be happy, upbeat, feeling great when you're around people, you could be feeling really good. And you go home, you feel absolutely terrible. Now, the reason you feel good around other people is because you take on other people, because you're an empath. You're mapping the person's mind. You're mapping them, you're mapping their mind, you're mapping their chemistry, so you feel really great. Yeah, empaths are energy vampires. Spoiler alert, like a blow up your illusion. You think that only other people, what was it, narcissists are energy vampires, so are empaths. You're on the opposite spectrum, but you are the same thing. But you don't know and you don't do it deliberately. But I won't even go into that. Maybe I'm going to make another video about empaths and their energy vampirism. You can't help it. It's a part of your gifting. Actually, when the empath is properly healed, you know, Siler's a bad guy from or he no, I don't want to ruin it. If you haven't watched Heroes, right, there's a character that's called Siler, and Siler is a badass because Siler can take on the power of whoever he's around, right? And so empaths are like that. We are incredibly powerful when we are healed, when we are trained. Um, yeah, so we are empaths are very powerful when they heal, when they're trained. An empath, a proper empath, a real empath, an emotional empath will not harm anyone. The ones they call dark empaths, which is a psychological empath, those are the ones who harm people, okay? But an empath who is an emotional empath cannot harm people because you actually feel the way other people feel. So the reason why when you're with people you feel extremely happy because they're happy and you're in a happy environment and you're feeling great, da 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 da. When you go home you feel like absolute shite because what is happening on a psychological level is not what's happening on the energetic level. Energetically, those people are holding their trauma, other people's trauma. They're holding on to a lot of negatives. And so you, as that purifier, you're taking it in, but you don't know how to get rid of it. It naturally happens to you that you absorb. You don't know how to purify. So imagine a stagnant pond of water and you keep on dumping into it. The water isn't moving, nothing's happening to the water. So that water becomes like a bog, basically. And this is why, you know, people say, I feel bogged down, right? So you feel like a swamp. I'm so sorry. You're an energetic swamp. The bayou. You know, and where was the places that they have these swamps? New Orleans. All the witches always like to congregate around the swamps. Anyways, so yeah, instead of being like a flowing river or instead of being like an expansive ocean, and you notice the ocean actually recycle, there's a cycle when it comes to water, there's a cycling that has to happen. So water is something that has to transition into many different things. So water is liquid, gaseous, or solid, okay? It's supposed to transition and it keeps on moving, right? But we can become frozen, which means we're not doing much good depending on where you are being frozen. um and sometimes you're gaseous and sometimes you are which is why empaths are sort of all over the place emotionally, right? But we have to learn how to make these smoother transitions, all right? And so we have to move our energy and become different things at different times as it's necessary. But sometimes we try to imitate other things around us at the wrong times, okay? And that's why we can be on or feel like we're unwell. A lot of times we are taking on other people's emotions, other people's thoughts. We genuinely believe it's our own. So the more empathic you are, if somebody's in pain, you might be in pain. If you don't know you're an empath and you don't know that's one of the abilities that you have, you'll take on somebody else's physical pain and you don't know. If you're in a crowd or something like that, which is why you'll have a lot of different aches and pains in your body, and you don't know where they're coming from, or you take on psychological maladies from people and you think it's yours. You think, you're more prone to becoming neurotic. And in fact, it said that the more neurotic you are, that means you have many incarnations because you don't become neurotic in one incarnation. So if you're a neurotic person, overly emotional and all this kind of stuff, that is a sign that you are an empath. You might be very suicidal. A lot of empaths will take their own lives in their teenage years or any point of your life because it's just so painful. And because you don't know you're an empath, you don't know this is not your emotion, you don't know that you're taking on other people's like all the emotions around you in your family, and you're carrying all of that, it makes you want to take your life. You just want to check out of here. It feels too painful. The people who are more who thrive here in this toxic energy are the narcissists, are the sadists, are the psychopaths, or those are on that higher on the side of that spectrum. So I hope that's making sense. So we've got to do the work on ourselves. I'm just checking if I've said all the things I wanted to say. Yeah, actually, whenever you've done the work on yourself, you become the most energetically powerful creature on the planet. And so, this is why they are really trying to create so much toxicity that the empaths cannot function. Okay, we're in this psychological and energetic and spiritual warfare. Empaths, when you are healed, you're actually more powerful than any psychopath, narcissist. Um, you know, uh, but it's so perverse. You can't be afraid. Fear is not your friend in this. If overly fearful, that is okay. Fear has its use, but if you become fearful, you become paranoid and you cripple yourself basically. So you got to get to know who you are, why you're here, and you got to heal yourself. But you got to, and you can do this very gradually and over time. And it's not a great idea to be adding extra toxins into your body, because it's not helpful to you. So you can decide, if you so choose, you have free will to transition over time. Transition gently over time, every day, choosing something more healthy, or healthier, and do this gentle transition, as opposed to trying to be sadistic um, with yourself, because you're not a sadist. Like, empaths are not sadistic. We're not sadists. And that's why if you try to do try to deal with yourself in a draconian way, if you try to be too harsh with yourself, it doesn't work. You actually just you will fail. You would just, and this is what people think of as self-sabotage. You're not sabotaging yourself. You're just not operating according to who you are or what you are. You're very, very sensitive. If you're an empath, you're incredibly sensitive, the most sensitive on the planet, and that's why it's hard to cope. And therefore, you have to be very sensitive when you are healing. Okay, I want to read some things from the shadow work, because we have to do the real work. Okay, we have to do the real work. We have to sort of understand what's happening to ourselves, so that we can heal, we can stand in our power, and we can help the people who we are really here to help. And we have to help ourselves first. All right. Yeah, I actually want to share something that Spirit said, right? That we must grow in all directions. So we don't just grow tall, we must go down, we must, hello. Sorry. Multidirectional. So we, we must grow in all directions. So we must grow. We must grow. So we're growing toward the light. We also must have deep root within the dark, right? And we must also be expansive. So this is growing in all direction. And they showed the image of a flower. You know, those kind of flower that's, and I guess maybe that's why they use that as a chakra, like a lotus flower. I guess maybe that's probably one of the reasons why they use this lotus image. I don't know. But anyway, they showed an image like that, like a flower that grows in all direction. Okay. So that's how we need to be. Of course, that's in, whatever. You grow in multi directions, which means you're growing up, down, that way, that way, that way, back, forth, whatever. Okay. So when we are growing, we must always think about this, all directions, not just be not polarized, right? And not only thinking about light work, we must also think about shadow work. Yay! Finally, I saw an orb. I was wondering if they're going to show themselves. Yeah, so I get excited about seeing an orb. Anywho, so this is from Meeting the Shadow, the hidden power of the dark side of human nature. Okay, where our power is in our shadow. So this is a conversation. This is on page 22. So I'm going to read 22 to 24. It's a conversation between the sun, which I don't know what the sun is. Must be the I don't know if it's like a paper or something. Somebody who's interviewing from a particular magazine or a paper, and he's interviewing a psychologist that's called Stanford. And so this is Dr. Patrick Miller. This is on page 22. Dr. Patrick Miller, What the Shadow Knows, an interview with John A. Stanford. Okay. So one character is the sun and one is Stanford talking. I don't know who this sun is, S-U-N. I don't know why they use that. So the sun. But how do we tell the difference between what looks sinister and what is sinister? Stanford. The question is well put and not readily answered. It depends a lot on the psychology of the person looking. The more rigid your psychology framework, the more things are going to look sinister to you. I can only say that when the archetypical level of evil is finally expressed, everyone is eventually shocked by it, but not always in time, of course. The world was very slow to recognize the evil of Nazi Germany. What helps us tells the difference is what Jung called the feeling function, your inner means of ascertaining the value of something. The feeling function tells us what is desirable and not desirable, but it's not an ego judgment. The ego determines what's good and bad from a point of view of its own concerns. That which tends to support your egocentric defense system is what you deem to be good. That which is antithetical to it, meaning opposite, we deem to be evil. When the Puritans infected the Native Americans with diseases that killed them, the Puritans saw it as a good thing and preached sermons about how God was paving the way for them to settle the land. Of course, the Indians who were dying of smallpox would have had a different judgment of the good and evil in a situation. The feeling function is free of egocentric contamination. It is a pure feeling evaluation, but it's not always heard. The fact that the American public eventually turned against the Vietnam War was due to the rise of the feeling function. An increasing number of people came to a feeling judgment that the war was wrong and terrible, even if it supposedly served our political aims. And of course, they were right. The value judgment of the feeling function is a reliable determiner of the good and evil in a situation, provided that it has the right information. If it doesn't have all the information or sees only a part of the whole situation, the feeling function is perfectly capable at arriving at an erroneous conclusion. The feeling function is our empathy. Empathy means that you care deeply about others, right? But empaths in a certain state of mind, they don't understand. Like if the psychology is off, like you're not getting the right information about something, so you need information for you to have the right kind of ego functioning, because your ego has to be the one that deciphers the information that you're getting, right? And so this is why empaths usually are misjudged by the world, because you don't know yourself. You think you're sick. You go to these people and they medicate you up to the eyeballs and you become even more dysfunctional. But if you understand what empathy is and the use of empathy, right? So you know what your purpose is in the world, right? So when you are an empath, you're able to attune differently to things. So when somebody else is egotistically looking at what they're gaining from a situation, empathically you're like, this does not feel right. Something is off here. I don't feel right about the situation, because that empathy is going to make you feel sick. You're going to feel nauseous. You're going to, and you're having these, what seems like dysfunction. And they say, oh, you're too sensitive. You're always being told you're too sensitive and you're impractical or all kinds of stuff. And you may fall for it and believe that something is wrong with you. But actually, empathy is a different way of reading. This is what they're calling the feeling function. It's a different way of reading the reality of a situation. And so you're able to know right from wrong, genuinely from intuitive knowing. Okay, so empathy actually intunes you into your intuitive knowing. Empathy actually has even more, like, if you don't, I can't really get into how powerful being an empath is on one video, but I will do many, many, many videos on this subject, so you will know that you're not some dysfunctional person that just can't function and you can't live. It's just that you're having a whole bunch of information that you're not processing correctly. In your practice, what have you observed to be the process of integrating the shadow? When one first sees the shadow clearly, one is more or less aghast. Some of the egocentric defense system then necessarily fall apart or melt away. The result can be a temporary depression or clouding of the consciousness. Jung compared the process of integration, which he called individuation, to the process of alchemy. One stage of alchemy is the melanosis, where everything turns black inside the vessel containing all the alchemical elements. But that black stage is absolutely essential. Jung said it represents the first contact with the unconscious, which is always the contact with the shadow. The ego takes that as a kind of defeat. So a lot of people stay within the depressive state and they think something is wrong with them. And of course, you run to go and get medication, which further incarcerates you from being in contact with yourself and with source, okay? Because you won't be able to think very well on meds. But sometimes it feels so painful, like you just feel like you can't survive. And also the ascension syndromes, it can be just horrific. It is so horrific that you definitely think at times there's something seriously wrong with you. And if you panic and if you don't get the right help, you will end up going down the wrong path, okay? The sun. Is it possible to get stuck there? Can we be doomed to one encounter with the shadow after another with no integration following? Stanford. I don't think so. But a genuine insight into the shadow also calls out what Jung calls the self, the creative center. And then things begin to move. So the depression doesn't become permanent. 1,000,001 changes can occur after that. It's different for every individual. What Kendall calls the real center of the personality begins to emerge. And gradually the ego reorientates to a closer relationship with the real center. Then a person is much less likely to become affiliated with genuine evil, because the integration of the shadow is always concurrent with the dissolution of the false persona. There's only a false persona that causes a person to go into actual evil, okay? One becomes more realistic about oneself. Seeing the truth of one's own nature always have a solitary effect. Honesty is the great defense against genuine evil. When we stop lying to ourselves about ourselves, that's the greatest protection we can have against evil. So we need to start telling the truth to ourselves about how we feel about things, what we think, and what we're doing, what our motives are, to stop us from actually going down the route of becoming to become villainous. Okay, so all of us can do that, so we don't become toxic, so we don't end up doing terrible things. Like I said, a genuine empath cannot, but everybody's on different waves of the spectrum. And also you can cocoon your empathy. That's another thing. You can cocoon yourself into because the ego will calcify, will make a cocoon around the genuine real self, and will oopsies. The ego can actually create this hard shell, this cocoon that prevents you from knowing who you truly are, because it's protecting the genuine self. And so you're acting out as a persona, and therefore you can actually do evil. You can harm somebody. So not to say that a genuine empath cannot harm. If you are not in contact with your genuine self, you can harm. When you're in contact with your genuine self, you cannot harm, because it harms you to harm another person. So there is a protection against you actually doing evil when you are in touch with your true self. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. There was some other stuff that I wanted to read, but I'll do that at next time, because I don't want to make any long videos over a certain amount of time. Like I said, upload speed and all these different things. So do leave me a message, let me know what you think of this video. Do press the like button, do share, do subscribe, and until next time, love, light.